eventually be a memory of a time when I tried so hard and got so far, but in the end, it doesn't even matter. I had to fall to lose it all, but in the end, it doesn't even matter. I put my trust in you, pushed as far as I can go. For all this, there's only one thing you should know. I've put my trust in you, pushed as far as I can go. For all this, there's only one thing you should know. I tried so hard and got.
Hi everyone, it's Dr. Ramani and welcome back to this YouTube channel on narcissism. My goal and my hope for this channel is that the content here will help you understand any number of situations relevant to difficult, high conflict, antagonistic, narcissistic relationships. If you're new to this channel, please hit that subscribe button, join this community, and also if you hit that bell, you'll get notifications every time we put out new videos, which these days is every day. So let's talk about what the family roles again. Remember, we've been talking about the various family roles and sort of what happens. Well, let's really clear the question up. What happens to the truth teller? We've talked about the family roles. You're all pretty clear on what they are, but I will offer a review. But now once you know you've had those family roles, and many of you have had more than one, the question is, what kinds of risks did this set me up for in adulthood? Now, in many cases, I might be preaching to the choir because you're living this, but also if you're going through this and you're worried about this for your children too. Now, the truth teller is a role that many people hadn't heard of, unlike the golden child and all of that. But when people heard this role, a lot of people recognized themselves in it. The truth teller could probably be better termed the truth seer, because lots of truth tellers don't or can't say anything, but you can sort of see it in their faces that they get it. So let's talk about, just a review, what the truth teller or the truth seer is about, and then let's talk about the various pathways that sort of unfold for them.
Hello, guten Tag, aloha life coach.
Hi, Aloha Life Coach. We are live. So this is Something Found. My friend Something Found, and Something Found, you are being recorded. Do I have your permission to record you and put you in an upcoming video?
I'm shocked, but yes, absolutely.
You're shocked. Okay. Yeah, so you know what? When I said I am going to be done, I'm going to give this sucker 10 minutes. It's like magic. Shit starts working after all. So, I was about to tear myself bald trying to tear my hair out, with this frustration. But anyway, so today, Something Found and I are going to be analyzing Dr. Ramani's Truth Teller video. And Something Found sent that to me a couple of days ago. And I figured that a lot of other people would really, really benefit from not only Dr. Ramani's video, but also our discussion and our input into that. What do you think, Something Found?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So, let me see. Can you hear me good? I've got everything queued up. Everything is everything. All right. So, yeah. Why did you send me this video, this Dr. Ramani Truth Teller video? And what is it about?
Yeah, I mean, hey, and we can both talk about this, but why I sent it was because it was very relatable to our individual experiences. And I really feel, at least in my personal experience, I definitely was the truth teller, that she speaks of. And the way a narcissist looks at a truth teller and how they react. And so also, I mean, you can share, why I sent it to you as well and what you found out, after watching it.
Right, right. Something found and the details of our background. Hold on just a minute. I've got something at the door here. Just a second. Okay, sorry about that. I had a delivery at the door. But something found in I, although our details are different, we do have very, very significant similarities in that we both have had a childhood having to deal with toxic and narcissistic parents, and in my case also step persons. I don't call that person a parent. I call that person a step person. But that person was married to a woman who gave birth to me and who has biological genetical ties to me. In any case, something found had both her parents, biological parents there. Of course, the child abuse wasn't the same, and I don't know if we can really say it wasn't as extreme, because emotional abuse and mental and physical abuse is just as horrible as the depraved sexual abuse and all kinds of other things that go with it. So we're not going to get into any details, but we're definitely going to cover the basic topics that I think anyone who has gone through this can relate to, right?
Yes, exactly. I mean, abuse is abuse, and narcissists are narcissists, and it really just shows how they all follow the same types of patterns. So when I saw this video, one of my main reasons for sharing it with you was because of that. It was like, oh my goodness, you and I have already shared a lot of stories, and I see this in myself, but I also saw it in you as well. And I was like, I think you could probably relate to exactly what she's talking about. So,
Yes.
Yes, let's get into it because it's
Yes.
so fascinating.
Yeah. When I watched it the first, I have been in therapy, and I have been going to group counseling and one-on-one, and even have a good support system, including you, where we talk about these things and process these things on and off throughout the years, And I've had a lot of years of therapy and healing and processing, but I'm still processing different parts of it even to this day. I'm almost half a century old. I'm almost 50 years old, and it seems like it's a work in progress until my dying day. And one of the things that I had never really locked in until you sent me that video a few days ago was the fact that when Dr. Ramani talks about the truth teller, or the truth seer, more like the truth seer, right? The child that sees through the narcs enough to put boundaries. Now, as a child, they may not understand what boundaries are yet. They may not even have that term, boundaries. But there are things that certain truth seer children, truth teller and truth seer children do. And one of them is, as Dr. Ramani says, that they distance or pull away from the narc parent. They definitely don't seek out opportunities to get heavily engaged and involved with the narc parent, right? You remember that part? I think that was probably on the, I know I'm kind of skipping around right now, but that was like what stood out for me, because
The truth teller is the child who at a relatively early age in a narcissistic family system gets it and sees it. At some nascent level, they are the child who sees that what is happening around them is simply not cool. They see it as manipulative, even though they don't know the word. It's as though they can see the narcissistic parent's inadequacy and insecurity, and they know that the gaslighting is gaslighting, and that they know the manipulation is manipulation. And in this way, it's interesting, even at a relatively young age, the truth teller child already is sort of ahead of the curve. They're doing the deep technique, you know, the don't engage and all of that, without knowing it is a technique. It's like they almost cellularly know to not defend, engage, explain, or personalize. Gray rocking and firewalling almost come naturally to them. Not all of the time. I mean, obviously, just like any child, they want to be heard and seen, but pretty early in the game, they recognize that that is not likely to happen with these parents. There is something in the truth teller child's eyes or face that almost lets the narcissistic parent know that that truth teller child gets it. For that reason, even without saying a thing, many truth teller or sort of truth seer children can easily become the scapegoat. The parent doesn't like this feeling of sort of being seen for what they are. The truth teller / truth seer child has to take on some very uncomfortable roles as they go through childhood. It's interesting. At one level, the truth teller children, they can actually be quite soothing and protective of their siblings, especially since most of their siblings wouldn't understand this.
I had started locking myself in my room as early as 10 years old. I would go into my room when the step person would come home, when I'd see him come through the driveway. I would get up from the living room and go into my room and close the door and not come out until he was gone or until it was time to go to school, which by that time he was usually gone to work already. So, or unless it was, time to go to the church meetings. They call them Kingdom Hall, the Jehovah's Witness. They don't want to call it church, but it's basically church meetings. So, and then as I got older as a teen, like starting around 11, 12, 13, I put a lock on the door and started locking my door. And at the Kingdom Hall, I didn't want to sit with them anymore. I would sit with other people, or I would sit in the back school. They call it the back school, which is an area where you're way in the back. You're kind of shielded from the main congregation. And the way we had it set up, you could come in really late. Nobody would really know it unless they were like really looking hard for you, because there was like this little hallway. So you could even pretend that you were at the meetings sometime, because you could say, well, I was in the back school. If they say, well, I didn't see you at the meetings. Oh, I was in the back school. I left early, So that's what I would do. And then when I got a lot of flack for it, they would say, people at the hall are talking because you're not sitting with us. Then I would sit one seat away from the incubator, the woman who gave birth to me. I would have an empty seat between her, because I just did not want to be around them. And I was already being primed for that as early as 10 years old. What about you, Something Found? Didn't you have something kind of like that, similar to?
I just can't believe how similar our stories are, because it really was that way for me as well, in terms of mainly isolating myself so that I wouldn't have to deal with either parent. That happened a lot.
Right.
And one thing I want to touch on for me, and I don't know if we're going to touch on it on another part of this, but for me, it's when the illusion fell, right? And so it was like, I liken it to when a kid out there really realizes that Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny isn't real.
At one level, the truth teller children, they can actually be quite soothing and protective of their siblings, especially since most of their siblings wouldn't understand this. They can let the siblings know that it's nothing that's happening is their fault and that the parent is in the wrong. And the truth teller child has an almost adult-like wisdom, and they can walk their siblings through what's happening to them. The challenge is that the truth teller / truth seer child is also sort of the anti-enabler. They speak truth. So, for example, the golden child or the brainwashed child or even other adult family members may not want to hear it. And some children in the family system, the narcissistic family system, may want to defend the parents or will get angry at the truth teller child for getting it, seeing it, maybe even calling it out. The truth teller child is almost preternaturally wise, and it is such a difficult role because the child in this role doesn't really have the vocabulary in childhood to sort of fully get it. I doubt, and I kind of hope poor children aren't reading about narcissism, so maybe they should. These children know that something isn't right, but the vast majority, obviously, are not learning about these personality styles between multiplication tables. Most of you are adults and you're just learning about them, for some of you, well into adulthood. The truth teller can actually have a rather lonely childhood. They do tend to stay a bit distant from the narcissistic parent to protect themselves and sometimes even the entire family system. They may be a child who prefers to do things on their own. This is a child that may have a very rich inner world, and so there can be a real loneliness at times. And these children are not going to be the ones who are throwing themselves into the middle of activities with the parent. As I said, narcissistic people at any age, by anyone, they don't like to be seen. And in fact, may even say to the truth teller child, "I can see you judging me, you little twit." And the truth teller child may just be sitting there quietly, not saying a word, but you can see it on their face. So there's a scapegoating that happens to truth-telling kids, putting the truth teller in the role of experiencing some of the same difficult fallout as they go into in adolescence and adulthood as a scapegoated child. The difference is that the truth teller child is less likely to blame themselves for their parents' behavior, knowing damn well that the narcissistic parent is not right. So that's to their benefit. But another downside of being a truth teller is that you do see it. And that almost means that you're like that kid in the movie who can see dead people. Not a good feeling. As they go into adulthood, truth tellers, they can sort of see the narcissistic people before anyone else can. And that can actually leave you as an adult with a sort of anxious kind of, oh no, here we go again kind of thing. You may, for example, meet a friend's new partner and think, oh no. You may meet a new colleague at work, and again, that anxiety, oh no. It can wear you down, leave you cynical, but think of the bright side. You have the luxury of seeing it early and hopefully steering clear of.
So that was the way it worked for me. It was like, okay, parental comfort, parental ownership, like stewardship,
Yes.
none of that is happening. So I don't have any illusions right now that I'm going to be cared for. So what I'm going to do, I see right through you two people, and I'm just going to go ahead and get out of your way. And,
Yes.
and that's really, for me, I was isolating in that way right around, pretty much same
age,
years, 9,
huh?
10 years old.
Yep.
9,
Yeah.
10 years old. The illusion fell, and it was like, okay, the best way to survive, and part of this is also built in survival systems. The best way to survive an abusive situation is to take yourself out of the situation
Yes.
as best as you can. And that's all a child knows what to do, because you're still a child in your mind. I mean, you're not going to be able to understand even what you are doing. You're not,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? So
Right.
you were just doing it to protect yourself from pain. At least I was.
Yes.
So, that it was all going into that survival mode at the hands of these narcs. So yeah, I and then the Kingdom Hall thing is the exact same thing. I never wanted to sit with my mother. My dad wasn't in it, but I never wanted to sit with my mother. I would try to sit with friends or just sit with any random person.
Yes, that's how I was.
Just
Yes.
okay, you can see that I'm sitting next to this person. You're 2 rows behind me, but at least I'm not sitting next to you.
Yes.
And so yeah, that's why I have to laugh, because we both have such similar stories of the way we were able to try to cope in our own child minds to something as serious as what we were going through. So
Right.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. With me, there was I can't, it's like, I think you and I are not that unique. I think there's people out there that will listen to this and even watch Dr. Ramani's video and that will tell us the same thing. And they may not have had the Jehovah Witness thing. They may be Catholic Church or some other kind of situation, but the same kinds of things. By the time they were 8 and 9 and 10 years old, they were already doing this. And then when they got to be 11, 12, they were doing that, because in my case,
Yep.
it was like, exactly like you said, like the illusion of parents having a mom, having a dad, and being protected and nurtured. That I realized at definitely by 10 years old, I realized that that was an illusion, just like the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus. I knew that, yeah, and it put me in a very deep, dark. It was very scary. Number one, it was very scary because if you don't have your parents as a child, there's nowhere to turn. There's no one. And so it was very scary, but it put me in a deep, dark depression. And, that was some baggage that no child should have to carry, But as I got to be a teenager, as soon as I got a car, I used the excuse that I had to work to just completely not be there unless I just had to come home to eat and sleep for some time.
Yep.
So,
And that's a similar story to mine too. I got a job at 15 years old, and I never stopped working, and
yeah,
it was mainly to get the heck out of the house. And I did. I stayed. I only would show up to, go to meetings and, serve that role because you
yeah,
had to still play the part
yes,
of, we are still a tight family unit because you still show up to this
yeah,
thing for an hour a week.
right,
But that was the only reason. So I would literally be out all the way till about a half hour before the Kingdom Hall, and then I would be out again. So
yeah,
it was just like, I'm not staying. So yeah, I mean, it's a lot of the coping mechanisms that we had to use, and luckily some of those coping mechanisms were available to us. I mean, they were the only thing we could do, because you're still a child. That's the thing that people need to
yeah.
understand. These are things that happen when developmentally you're not even able to really handle.
Oh yeah,
And even an adult would find a struggle handling, but we did that. And you're exactly right. I like how you touched on, we are not alone. And that's what that's one of the things that you and I have always talked about, that, my message to anybody, I hope you guys are listening to this. I hope you watch Dr. Ramani's video, but one of the things is, you are not alone. You are
right,
not crazy. You went through this. Do not deny that you went through this if you did. And, and know that there are a lot of people out there who experience the same kind of things. But yeah, are there any other topics on the truth-telling video that you want to raise?
oh yeah.
Because I know, yeah.
Well, we're still kind of in it, but at the beginning, she talks about the children, that the truth tellers, the truth seekers, are actually preternaturally wise without really, as a child, knowing what boundaries and manipulation and all that is. I just knew on an instinctual level. I mean, animals know fight or flight. So I knew that if I was around these two adults long enough, I would have a fist in my mouth, And so this is what stopped me from coming out of my room and made me, when at first it was just when he was coming home, but as I got a little older, 11 or 12, the incubator, the woman who gave birth to me, she definitely at that age, she would instigate horrible beatings and of a very, very depraved sexual nature. And she was there and instigating it and feeding off of it as a sign, I guess it was revenge for me talking back to her. When she would ask me to do chores like wash dishes or something, I would talk back to her. I mean, you're a teenager, you're going to be sassy. You know what I mean? You're not going to want to just obey everything because you're now becoming a young adult who wants to find their own way. And so as a revenge tactic, she would have him do these things to me. And it was all about power. So I realized already around about 9, 10 years old, that every time I spend a significant time around these two, I'm ending up with a fist and getting beaten. So it was just a primal instinct where I knew just to stay away. So as I became older, 11 and 12, I realized I couldn't be around the incubator either. So I would stay in my room the whole time when they were at home, unless they would call me out to the front to scold me, or it was time to go to school, or, well, they never took me to school. I had to always walk alone to school, so it wasn't that, but church meetings, unless it was time to go to church with them, to Kingdom Hall. But, and then even around them, I just learned to just not say anything, or just say, okay, whatever they said, just say, okay, because if I were to express my thoughts and what I thought, I would get beaten, and it was just like clockwork. So to me, it was like an animal instinct of self-preservation and protection. I knew if I stayed invisible, out of sight, out of mind, then the likelihood of me getting beaten or abused would be less likely, right? And I even did that when I was bullied at school by some kids. I just learned to, when I got off the bus, we got off the bus like at 6:50 a.m. in the morning, and school didn't start till 8:15, so there was plenty of time, for all kinds of bullies to do whatever they wanted to do to certain people. And I learned to hide in other areas of the school grounds until the bell rang for class, because I knew this, if they didn't see me, then the chances of me getting bullied, are going to be less. So I think in one instance, I can say that was just pure animal instinct, of self-preservation that made me start doing that. But as I got older, especially like you said, when you realize the Easter Bunny isn't real, Santa Claus isn't real, and this thing with parents, it's not real, at least not in your world. You don't have parents. There's two adults there, at least adult-bodied people, but they're not protective, they're not nurturing, and they're not safe. So
Absolutely. The safety factor.
Yes.
Absolutely, Bob.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, that's
And
it.
those are under Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Those are the basic
The
things
basic
that a human
needs.
being needs.
Yes. Yes.
These are the basic needs, and none of those are getting met. So that is why, in a way, and I'm just gonna say it, you go feral.
Yes.
You're gonna be like, hey, I'm gonna be in this hole and in this cage, and I'm gonna put myself here just to survive this situation. But it's also more than that. Dr. Ramani touched on a thing that I think you and I also experienced, and one of the reasons for maybe why the abuse was so extreme. And this is no justification for any type of abuse, but it's a qualifier on why the abuse was extreme.
Right.
Because with that, what Dr. Ramani was pointing out about the truth seer is that the actual narcissist or narcissists in your life know that you see through them. And that's the biggest thing. And that is for me, Bob. My experience was I saw through both parents. And I literally, and not only did I see it, I called both of them out on it. And I was very young when I called them both out on it. And my father told me in my adult life that was one of the main reasons for him treating me worse than the rest of the children, because I questioned and I knew. And, when somebody actually admits that, like a psychopath to you, you just kind of go, oh my God, I already knew, but you actually told me. And that's even doubling down on the, wow, the true seer really is a factual thing that does occur to people. People who are more empathic will usually get this type of treatment, because they can, empathic people who are in tune with their emotions, can see through the emotions of other people as well, and can understand those emotions, and they're very emotionally aware. And that, I used to get teased. I was called the crybaby with my siblings there. I was the one mocked for being a crybaby and sensitive. And that was at age 4 and 5. You know, when your
Wow.
formative years,
Yeah.
I was actually mocked by my parents for being sensitive. So once you learn that, it's like you start going inward and you start just becoming an observer of their patterns. And that is the one thing that the truth seers see. And that's what she was pointing out. The truth seers in these family relationships have already sussed you out, guys. They've sussed you out as a narcissist. And they might not say that you're the narcissist because, hey, they don't know those words at that young age, but they know your actions and they know your patterns. And the thing is, the narcissist knows that they know, and that's why they get the brunt of the abuse, and that's why they get usually are scapegoated or usually are heavily abused. And that's why I said, when I watched that video, that resonated so hard with me, because I mean, I used to try to protect my brother and sister from any abuse. I mean, I because I knew, I was trying to help my other siblings not get the same kind of treatment. But, you know, it was how they treated me specifically, and how they even admitted it later in life that they knew I knew. It was very validating to know that. And that's what rang in my head when I saw that part, because
these patterns early. In the long term, frankly, I think, though, the truth tellers may have the best outcomes in terms of themselves relative to most of the other family roles. The truth tellers are often straight shooters. They see it, they get it. In fact, people may find truth tellers in adulthood to be sort of really to the point and kind of don't mess around-ish. Truth tellers do not suffer fools. They can be really good at boundaries. Truth tellers tend to have good instincts. They honor those instincts. They can see an unhealthy situation and step back and not engage. The majority of adults don't get here. The truth tellers got here in childhood. Now, what trips up the truth teller, though, however, is self-doubt. Even the wisest child doesn't do great with everyone telling them that they're wrong or simply just being ignored by their family. Even the other family role types are at risk to fall into enabling roles, especially with the parents and especially the fixers and the helper child. They'll say things like, "Mom didn't mean it," or "They're just having a hard day," or "Stop being so difficult," or "They're going to get mad." So the truth teller may be carrying a legacy of being left to feel like they're the ones with the problem. Depending on other dynamics in the system and the truth teller child's temperament, that can lead to self-doubt or even social isolation in adulthood, because it can feel like people cannot be trusted. The truth teller may often wonder, they may say, "My instincts tell me that this situation isn't good, but everyone else is telling me to just go along." You hear that enough, you doubt yourself. And this self-doubt can plague the truth teller, who will either internalize it and keep doubting themselves, or just become really avoidant of people because people just feel too messy. Now, the truth teller is the family role that is the most likely to cut away from the family situation. They are the ones who see it, perhaps even sense at an early age that none of this is ever going to change, and they get the hell out of Dodge.
it was like, oh my goodness. Yeah. It just, yeah, it hit on all cylinders for me.
Yeah, and I'm really, I have to say, I'm really sorry that you went through what you went through. We're not going to get into any details about either of our, stuff here today, but, there are things that, no, like I said, no child should have to go through. And the warning signs are there. The signs are there. I don't understand why these narc parents go on these forums and go on these threads and cry and boo-hoo, and even go to group meetings with other narc parents who have been cut off, and pretend like they don't know what happened, everything was going fine, and then one day out of the blue their son or their daughter said, "I don't want to talk to you anymore, I'm cutting you off," and that was that. And it's such a big mystery. It's not. I don't believe that one bit, because in my case, you could see I was heading down that path to cut that incubator and that step person off, and in my personal case, I look, I don't know about anybody else's incubators and toxic parental units, but in my case, I know that incubator cannot be sad or crying because number one, she cut her own people off. She cut her own parents off. She did it herself, cut them off, didn't even tell them she was leaving the country. Okay, so no, can't tell me she's sad because she did it herself and for good. And I don't doubt she had good reason. Okay, I do not doubt that she had a good reason for cutting her parents off. Just like I have a good reason for cutting her and her husband off, the step person. You see, but in my case here too, going back to that truth seer child, that was the reason, and to have your own father admit that to you, this didn't come from a conclusion you drew based on the facts. This didn't come from a third party like your mother or your sibling saying that to you, that he said that. No, he himself told you himself right out of the horse's mouth.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. And how, and of course, as a truth seer, you already knew that. I already knew that. I already knew.
Yes.
And I was the one scapegoated because, I lived in my situation. I lived in a situation where I would see the other two children pitting against me. They would do that. They would pit the other two kids against me. I was the one getting made fun of. I was the one. There was a lot of that, too. There was a lot of, you know how narcs love to triangulate. So because they had 3 children, that is what they did. And I knew I was not crazy back then. And, and so
yes.
you have, unfortunately, you end up, again, because it's a child mind, you end up isolating yourself from everyone in that family dynamic. And that's really where I was. I isolated myself pretty much, that's it. And again, I don't want to get into like all the details, but that's really that. Like
I want to touch on that one point you said. I want to hear the rest of what you're about to say, but when going back to this crazy, this is a common thing that narcissist parents do. They put out that narrative. My child is crazy. My daughter, I've tried everything I can for my daughter. I just don't know how to help her. Oh, my son, he's got mental issues. We're done. We've tried everything, and he's just such a mentally crazy kid, and this is a common tactic that these narcissists in general, even if somebody's dating a narc, they'll take that crazy narrative and try to use that and spread that and make the person look crazy to where they're discredited in the eyes of others and people don't pay them any mind when they're out here telling what it is that's actually happening.
It's the classic narc response of gaslighting and then devaluing. And that is really the constant rat race treadmill that a victim of narcissistic abuse is on. Whether they chose to get into a relationship or whether they were born into it like you and I were. Right. It's a constant treadmill of gaslighting the victim, and I'll say survivor, or gaslighting the survivor and also devaluing them at the same time. So no, you can't possibly be thinking what you're thinking. And then the next thing is, well, you're not worth it. Well, this is all you. This is you. You're the one that's messed up, and you're the one that's causing me to be this way to you. It's all that devaluing kind of stuff. Like, you're not important enough to them, but the only time you are important to them is to the perception of other people. So if it ever gets out, like if you ever speak your truth while you're in those dynamics and tell another living soul what you're going through, that's when they start coming back at it. And that's when they start, quote unquote, acting like they care when other people are looking. So I know we're going a little off topic.
Oh, you're right. I don't think you're off topic, but it's right in there.
But that's the truth seer. That's kind of most of the times the path of the truth seer. Like, they are subjected to I mean, all those classic dark things, but also they have to shield themselves because the damage is going to be much worse against them than the other people who willingly just go along with it or subconsciously don't understand how bad they're being gaslighted because they're children. I mean, they're kids, you know,
Yeah.
but when that true seer sees the patterns, they usually get the brunt of it. And that is one thing Dr. Ramani touched on, that they are usually the scapegoats. And,
Oh,
and
yeah.
she even used, I think she used the black sheep of the family, or someone in the
Yes.
comments said, they're the black sheep. And I have to admit, I am the black sheep of my family, and happily so, because I knew all these patterns. And let's touch on one thing that you touched on. It's almost like, and I think I can't really describe the words because you said it so succinctly. It's like they can't really be shocked when a true seer finally leaves and never comes back, because they molded us that way.
Yes.
They basically set all the patterns in place.
Yeah.
And I know you said it better.
They
but
raised
set the
us,
patterns
they
in
primed
place.
us to be that way.
Primed us. There we go. They primed us to actually move out of that dynamic, because ultimately it is a discard. You know, it's a different way of discarding,
Right.
but it's a way of discarding where they can save face to the outside world, and that's all that matters to them.
Yeah.
And so when you really think about how they try to manipulate every single situation in your life, it's fascinating, but also very scary. I mean, because
Yeah.
wow, the lengths that they would go to
Oh,
just
yeah.
to keep that perception to the outside world that, oh my goodness, I'm the helpless victim. I don't know why. You know, and you're like, okay, you don't know why. But then let someone talk to the other person who survived this, and then they've got to sit there and piece the two together, because it's literally night and day. It's literally night and day. It's one person saying, oh, I did nothing but sacrifice myself for her or him, and then the other person going, I was left alone 90% of the time. I was neglected, abused, whatever. And it's like, okay, you know, it's up to another person to decide. But the one thing, and I will just say this, the one thing that I think survivors of narcissistic abuse need to do, when you're a true seer, or even when you're somebody who isn't that type of person in the relationship, when you exit a narcissistic relationship, I just want to bring this point to people. Please be kind to yourself, because even though you want to tell the world about this, not everybody is going to be receptive, and you can't beat yourself up for that. You have to really work on yourself. It's really telling in the first 3 minutes of our discussion where you said, I am still working on things. When I saw this video, it was like another thing to work on. Yes, people who survive this, when it's a family situation, or even long term in a romantic relationship, whatever, people who survive this, they need to just help themselves. They need to find groups. They need to find videos like that. You know, be with other people that have survived it, and try to work on yourself, and just be kind to yourself, and focus on healing those parts of you that were never met by your parents or by whoever. And it's hard work, but it can be done. When you start recognizing those patterns, I think empowerment is the best way out of narcissistic abuse. Personal empowerment, and learning to love yourself.
Yeah.
Period.
Self-care, you know, and I'm talking, like, a lot of people might laugh at this and say, yeah, I already know all that. But if you really, really check yourself on these basic self-care, you know, bathing, okay, getting that haircut or getting your hair done. And, you know, I'm not saying go out there and get $300 hairdos every week, but, you know, whatever you can afford on a regular basis, a basic haircut, you know, keeping yourself well put together. Like, again, you don't need to be a fashionista or have the latest brands, you know, but you can look really nice in Walmart, Target type clothes, you know what I mean? If that's all you can afford to shop at Target, there's nothing wrong with that, you know, but try to put a little time and thought into how your appearance is, how well put together you are. that's always, and do it for yourself. That's the self-care, doing it for
Well,
yourself. Eating, trying to
and
eat as,
even not, yes, I was just about to say, even not even like going to, hey, the thing is this, telling yourself every day that you love yourself. How
yes,
about that? How about starting with, because it will end up manifesting in actions that you do.
right.
But when you're having a bad day, when you're having a day where you just don't feel like getting out of bed,
Oh
don't
yeah,
hurt yourself for that.
right.
Don't go through the mental, like, don't beat yourself up like, oh my God, I've got so many things to do today and I'm just not doing anything. And then you go to that black and white thinking of, oh, I'm useless today. No, how about this? Stop the negative self-talk. If you can start there, I can tell you, if you can start there with, calming down that inner critic that was
Yeah,
always there when we're growing up because of these people.
right.
If you try to work on having an answer for that inner critic every time with something loving, with a message of love, number one, if you start documenting that, you're going to be very mindful of how many times you subconsciously do this to yourself in a day. And
Yeah,
that's where it starts, like
yeah,
learning about those kinds of things and trying to get yourself out of that. That's where it starts, and then eventually you can bring yourself back to loving yourself, because really that's what these narcissists did. They took away when you're in survival mode, you don't have time to worry about anything but those basic needs being met. So
that's true.
love doesn't even fall into the picture. Like
Yeah,
feeling love, or so then you've lost that part of yourself. And you have to first get back to that. And some people, I mean, really, they never do. It's going to be an uphill climb forever, but if you can start there with, hey, calming down that inner critic and being happy, finding things to be happy about. Hey, did you get up and did you just have a cup of coffee today? Score one. When you're having a bad day, that might be all you can do, and so
right.
it's like, don't beat yourself up for the things that you can't,
Yeah,
you can or cannot do, or whatever society's perception is of what you should be doing. Just
now,
know that you're going to have to be kind to yourself, because no one else was when it came
right.
to those
Because
relationships.
they
You
didn't get,
know?
and that's what I want to touch back on something you said, that those basic survival needs. You know, I know a lot of these narc parents, they'll try to put that fog on you, fear, obligation, and guilt. Well, I did everything. I provided food, clothing, and shelter. But when you look at that hierarchy of needs, Maslow's pyramid hierarchy of needs, the basic needs that you were supposed to provide your child, you didn't. The need for a safe
Yep.
environment, you did
Yep.
not. So don't put the horse before the carriage. You know that saying? Okay, don't talk about how you provided food and how you paid for summer camp and how you bought them a bicycle or whatever, or Nintendo system, okay? When you couldn't even provide a safe space. The
Right.
basics, okay?
All of that means nothing. All of that means nothing if a child is living in fear, constant fear, and has to isolate because they don't know when that other shoe is going to drop. All of those
Exactly.
things. I mean, I can honestly tell you, I had food in my belly every day, a roof over my head every day, and I had clothes on my back every day.
Same
To
here.
society, to society, I was a normal kid. But what was going on behind that roof, under that roof, what
Behind
was
closed
going on
doors.
behind closed doors,
Yes.
you
Mm-hmm.
know that all that goes out the window. So, but it's also very like, I want to touch on what you said, the fear and the obligation and the guilt. That is what they use on, at least for me,
Yeah.
that is what these parents used on me in order to, well, I mean, I can't tell you how many times my father would say, really, he would actually calculate how much of a burden we were to him by going over how much he spent on groceries.
Oh yeah,
Or
they'll
it's
they'll
going to
count
cost this
every
much.
penny that they
It's going to
spend on
cost
you and
this
throw it in
much.
your face.
it's going to cost this much to get you another pair of glasses. It's going to cost you this much to get you, whatever. And so you always, under these narcs, you always were made aware of what your or your detriment was to the bottom line in their life. So it was a struggle for them to take care of you. Well, they said take care of you, but you always were aware of the fact that you owed them something, because how about this? None of these people, none of us asked to be born. So, that was their conscious decision to bring a life into this world. And that was their job. That was their base duty in caring for another human being. And they failed, even with giving you a roof over your head or clothes on your back. That's a basic thing, but they made you feel like you needed to kiss their feet for it, because, no, we never asked to be born, period. So that was their job to do, and they failed. So that's basically what it just cracks me up because again, the similarities here, and again, I know we are more focusing on narc parents, but in narc relationships that are romantic, it's the same thing. You're still made to kiss someone's feet because they paid you some time a day. Their whole value is to devalue you. Their whole thing is to say no one else will have you, so this is why I did it. It's like they're doing it out of pity, and you should be grateful for the fact that they're even spending any time a day with you. Yep.
Isn't it pitiful when people get married to someone out of pity?
Exactly. I mean, it's just the way their contempt is of the person that they need for supply. They hate that they need that, and they're gonna make you
they hate that person. That incubator. Yes. She told me because she married the step person. I think I was almost 7 years old, and later on in my later life, not when I was little, but she told me that she was going to leave him the day that they were supposed to get married. He gave her an ultimatum, because they've been together for some time, so he wanted to get married or else move on to another woman. And so she reluctantly agreed because she needed the narc supply, and also.
But so did he. I mean,
of course. So she told me that he had been partying and drinking with his friends. He came home drunk like 3 or 4 in the morning of the day that they're supposed to get married. And they didn't have a wedding ceremony or anything. It was going to be like going to the courthouse and getting the paperwork and all that type of deal. So, but she was so pissed that he came home drunk at 3 and 4 in the morning. And so she got her bags and me together, and she was getting on the train. I didn't even know she was getting ready to leave him. She didn't want to marry. And I guess halfway to the train station, she changed her mind because she said she felt sorry for him. And that's when she got married to him.
Yeah. There's always a story, isn't there? I mean,
but you can tell it's the narky. Like, I remember I had a girlfriend.
I mean, it's always a sob story. Like, you're supposed to feel bad for them. Like, it's like, oh, well, doesn't this make me a good person because I felt sorry for another person? That's showing compassion. No.
She felt pity on him, and that's why she married him, basically. Right. Yeah. But that's the narc way, because no healthy person is going to marry someone that they feel pity on.
Well, and that video that you did with all of those sad parents that had been discarded by their sons and daughters. It's just, I mean, reading the stories of, I don't know what I did. I mean, this falls right under that. But then also to read the ones where it said, like we just touched on, well, I provided them everything, and this is how ungrateful they are. And you're always going to hear one or the other. And sometimes a mixture of both. Yeah. But it always comes back to, look at me. It has nothing to do with the child. It's always about, I need the attention. It's clearly attention behavior because they can't stop themselves, no matter how bad the story may look about them from somebody looking at it from the outside.
Right.
They don't care, because any attention is better than no attention at all. And that's really the pathetic part of what they are. And I know that's a judgment saying that they're pathetic, but they are.
It is
And
pathetic.
you know, it's really sad that they. And I've said this, and actually Dr. Ramani has said this in a video, in a separate video, but I've been saying it forever, even though I'm not a psychologist, that they really live inside that age 5 to 7 mentality. That's where they live, where it's me. And Dr. Ramani, with her many years of psychology behind her, said the exact same thing in a separate video, that is where they're locked into in their mind.
Yes.
That's where they're locked into. So they are all about instant gratification and me, and they never outgrow that. So when you're dealing with them, you're really dealing with an overgrown child.
Yeah.
And, you know, who's never learned to self-regulate their emotions, who's never learned to do all these things. And unfortunately, I mean, how can you expect a child to raise a child? You can't. So this is where we need to recognize their failures or some of the burdens that we have to bear now, and we have to be better adults. We have to work on that ourselves.
Well,
you know,
I will tell you this: I'm a hell of a lot better mother.
They may be this might be the family role that feels the least beholden to the narcissistic parent or parents. However, the truth teller can in some cases be quite fond of their siblings and may have to do that difficult calculation of whether they have to figure out whether they need to spend time with their parents in order to see their siblings. That said, the truth teller is often skilled enough to be able to skirt that line of perceiving the narcissistic parents clearly in all of their difficult behaviors. And down the line, if one of their siblings emerges to be narcissistic, the truth tellers may be quite good at spotting them too, and finding the workarounds and ways to have a relationship with the siblings or with other families they like. The truth teller can actually be quite facile at that. Listen, the truth teller is somebody who often, though, can also be viewed as a buzzkill, as a critic, as a person who's overly harsh. Some people may even label the truth teller as being judgmental or full of themselves. All of that obviously goes back to enabling. The fact is, if you really know and you understand narcissism in our world, it means that you really can't live in those warm and fuzzies anymore. And the truth teller's existence and sort of knowing means that they'll often call out those warm and fuzzies and say, you can all be warm and fuzzy, this situation's not healthy. Because of this, the truth tellers are often the ones that people may reject initially. Down the line, they may see their wisdom, but honestly, how many times can the truth teller live in that world of being perpetually rejected because they detect the painful truths that other people don't want to see?
Mother to myself
Hell
than my
yes.
own mother was.
And that's exactly it. You need to learn to honor that inner child that never had those needs met.
Right.
And that's very hard to do.
Yeah, but I remember that video she talked about where they are stuck in that mentality, and it is an overgrown toddler, an overgrown child, you know, and it is pathetic. It is pathetic because you have the adult resources to change and heal and become a better person, and you refuse to do that, you know, and that's pathetic in my book. I know that might be a judgment call, but hell, we all judge each other, okay? Okay,
Hell yes. We've already spent time judging us our whole life. So,
yeah,
you know,
right,
we
okay?
have the right.
Like, you know, people don't need to be telling me, oh, you judging me, because you've been judging me for quite some time now, okay? So, you know, go ahead and get over it, will you?
Yes, but you know I'm playing both sides here because I'm already expecting, you know, probably, you know, pages long, you know, oh, wow, you know, in your comments section.
Oh,
you know,
yeah, or those, you know, pathetic troll little tactics.
Yes.
I mean, I have to say,
down this road. We've been down
oh
this
my
road
God,
long
yeah,
enough
I'm rolling my
that
eyes hard.
we see it, you know, so. But what else on Dr. Ramani's video?
Let's see, I
want
think,
to touch on?
let me see, we, I think just the way we were talking, we touched on everything. I like the term firewalling and gray rocking because that's when she said firewalling, immediately I remembered how I used to close my door in my room.
Yes.
You know, that was firewalling. That was and just saying okay, one word responses. I used to even have headphones before it was, you know, a trend to have earbuds. Everybody's got earbuds now because they got cell phones. But back in the day when you had cassette players, I would have my headphones on the ride to the store or to the Kingdom Hall, or whenever I had to ride with them in the car, I would put on my headphones so I wouldn't have to talk to them. You know, more gray rocking, more firewalling. Or I just knew to just say okay and not say anything else. You know, don't give them,
Bingo.
you know, that's gray rocking. I mean, I didn't even know what that
Go
was.
along to get along. I mean, that's basically what you did. When
Yeah.
they needed something, you played your role as the obedient child, and you just said, at least for me, it was like, I will play the role as
Yeah.
an obedient child, but I am done trying to stick up for myself in this world because it's gonna be met with punishment, and I just want them to leave me alone. So from about that time, you know, all the way to, I mean, I left my house at 17, and I tell you what, if I knew, this was pre-internet, y'all, so I know we're in 2023, but when
Right.
I was growing up, it was in the 80s, and we didn't have the internet yet,
Right.
y'all, so I didn't know anything about emancipation or
Yeah.
any kind of laws
Oh,
or
gosh,
rules
no.
or anything like that. But I can tell you, if I did have access to those resources back then, I would have used them because I was out of that house
Oh,
as
yeah.
soon as I was physically
I would have
able to do
videotaped
so.
every fucking thing I
Yes.
could in that house because I would have had those videos.
I mean,
You hear me?
and that's really it. Like for me, it was like, okay, there was so many reasons for me getting a job so that I could work on becoming 100% independent of these people, even while I was there. So talk about firewalling. That was my way of firewalling, was to physically be absent as soon as I had the opportunity to physically be absent. And then it just went uphill from there. It was like, okay, how do I actually had, you know, another family offered to just have me there for like, you know, 6 months before I turned of legal age to be able to get a place. And, you know, and that was I can't thank those people enough even now for helping me through a journey of just getting the heck out of that house. And once I did, I was lucky enough to never look back. You know,
Right.
I do feel very lucky to be able to been able to do that and be that resourceful. But please understand, it was out of a need of survival. Those survival instincts, once they're in you and they're kind of thrust upon you, you don't get out of that survival mode until you feel you're safe, as we talked about. So once I had my own place, I finally was able to start working on me. You know,
Right.
I had a safe space now that was completely my own, that no incubator or breeder could touch or interfere with, and then I was able to work on myself.
Yeah.
But wow, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, and not everybody is that lucky. You know, not everybody gets those kinds of breaks in life, and they're dealing with these people, you know, in well into adulthood. So
Yep.
yeah, Bob, we definitely, you and I definitely have very similar stories and situations, and that's why I was like, yeah, he was the truth teller too. He was
Oh,
a
yeah.
truth teller too.
I think that's probably, I know that was one of the reasons for the extreme of the amount of abuse that I went through, was because I did talk back at, you know, and it was just I was a very intellectually precocious child, you know, so I think that
Hey.
also played a key. Plus, I was also gifted in music and in art, and you know, I think there was some envy going on that, and just you know, I was not a child that could be controlled and subdued. Like the more abuse that they heaped on me, the more I dug in my heels, and I just I remember there was something, and I don't know how to really describe it even in words now, but it was a presence above me, and I used to feel it, and sometimes I would see it on a subtle level. It was a presence right above my head, and it's not like voices or anything, but I would have a communication with that presence, and that presence would tell me to stay away. You know, it would tell me, like, when I remember when the step person, sometimes on the weekends he'd be off from work and it would just be him and the incubator was working. So I knew I wasn't safe there alone with him. So early in the morning before he got up, I would leave. I would get on my bike and just leave. And, you know, I was alone at home for the most part of my childhood. So, you know, I was riding the streets with my bike for hours on end alone. There was woods behind the house. I would explore in the woods for hours on end all day alone. And, you know, there was no adult supervising me. So it was easy for me to get out of there in the morning time and just not come back till 4 o'clock. That's when she got off, 3:30. So by 4 o'clock, I knew she would be at home. So that's what I would do. And it would be this presence communicating to me it's like I said, I wouldn't hear voices or anything. It was more like a gut level. It was more like there was a vibratory communication in my gut, even though the presence I felt right above my head. And of course, you know, now I think that was my Keta from the Kabbalistic tree. But at the time as a kid, I had no idea what that was. But it was this strong, you know, felt presence, like there was no doubt. And it would protect me. I think that was one of the protections I had, because it was what made me close the door, go in my room, and realize every time I'm around them, I'm going to have, eventually within an hour, I'm going to have a fist in my mouth, you know? And so I realized I'm just going to stay in my room.
And I'm going to break it down. I'm going to break it down to you. Look up the limbic system of your brain, and how that is what they call, they also call it like the lizard brain. That is the base part of your brain that senses danger. It's like when a lot of people who endure like a traumatic event, like for example, you know, somebody who goes into a parking garage and just says, "Oh my God, I just felt that this was not the right place for me to be in."
Right.
That is their limbic system
Yeah.
going into overdrive. And I do believe that people who have experienced extreme trauma and abuse, that part of their brain is so highly, you know, like there's, I mean, if you were to get an MRI of that system, it's probably very well trained and very much ready at the go.
Oh my God, I could
and
tell.
So I feel like that is what that is for you. I feel like, yes, you know, whether you call it a presence or a power or whatever, it is that part of your brain being very heavily activated to react to danger and to sense a presence of danger even before the rest of your body is aware. So yes, if you look that up at some point, and I know Mr. Scientist, I know you love learning about things like that too. And I'm very fascinated by how our brain works. We will never unlock all of the mysteries of our own mind.
You know, I could tell just
that, yes.
What'd you say?
If you read up on that, you will see the powers of your mind and how you were able to do what you did. And it really is, it just comes down to base survival. You know, and so, and also protecting yourself. So yeah, go look that up one time. You'll be fascinated. You'll have hours to be fascinated by the certain parts of your brain and when they go into action. And again, it's because that is where that was the level we were at. You know, we couldn't sit here and transcend any of these things other than what our child mind could allow us to do at the time. Like, for real. You know, some people call it an imaginary world, right? Some people call it my imaginary friend. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
like,
my imaginary friends taught me English. They taught me how to speak fluent English.
Okay.
My imaginary friends taught me how to fix bicycles. Like, I'm serious. My imaginary friends tutored me in school.
Yes.
You know, my imaginary friends consoled me when I was alone and didn't have any. My imaginary friends kept me safe as possible. You know what I mean? Under the circumstances. My imaginary friends told me, listen to the type of footsteps, listen to how they turn the key in the knob, and you can tell whether you need to completely stay away for the whole day or maybe just stay in your room for a few hours because of the way they turn the knob coming in the door. Like,
being a truth teller requires a person to be resolute as an adult and recognize that the toxic positivity brigade and the enabling brigade and the Pollyannas are just never going to be a fan of them. It's interesting. The truth teller can sort of, over time, be kryptonite to the narcissistic person's powers. They live a sort of fundamental truth. You can survive, I really do believe, not only survive, but thrive in a narcissistic world if you are willing to see these patterns clearly. Once you can honestly see it and not maintain false hopes of change or that you will be the exception, then you can actually coexist with the narcissist without getting too burned. But you will, more often than you'd like, get exhausted and at times even feel disgusted. Somehow, the truth teller has this ability to see all these patterns clearly from the very beginning. These are often introspective, smart, empathic children who grow into empathic, smart, introspective adults. Truth tellers can become amazing advocates, therapists, agents of change because they see it clearly and they don't enable it. The truth tellers, I guess, in their fashion, are the anti-enablers. The world definitely needs more truth tellers, but I recognize it takes a toll on them. And if you are one of them, I really tip my hat to you. It wasn't an easy path. Yet you are the ones who I believe are the only reason we will ever have a chance at a population level of pushing back on this trend of toxic people. So good luck to you, truth tellers. And if you are a truth teller, drop that down in the comments and let us know, or let me know, if this was actually true of you. Thanks again.
Like, I can tell even to this day. You and I, you know what I mean?
Had very similar experiences. That's what I'm saying. What ends up happening with people like us, what ends up happening with people like us is that is where our mind escapes to. It actually, our minds actually dissociated and went to another place to keep us safe. So yes, whether you were in contact with who you were in contact with, other people, they call it their imaginary friend, whatever. But there is another world that was built where we had to go to
right.
get to that safe space. And that's where our instincts lie. That's where our instincts were. That's how we knew, stay away. I mean, I remember having, you didn't have siblings, but I did. And I remember telling my siblings, you know, it's so funny how you said how the door unlocked and all that.
Right.
Oh my God, within 20 seconds of one of them coming home, I literally would tell my brother or my sister, don't get in their way. Just come on, stay in the room. Let's play. Let's do something.
Yes.
Like I would try to warn them. And then like clockwork, one of them would go out there and try to greet them. And then they were met with getting their ass beat. And it was like, I told you so. Like, I would literally be the person going, I told you, don't go out there. Stay in the room where it's safe. Just don't even be seen right now because they're in a bad mood. They're going to take it out on you.
Right.
And sure enough, they would get their ass beat, and then they would come in crying and carrying on, and it would just be a chaotic situation. But it was like, you know, it's so exhausting to be, but it's also... It's because we were the true seers. We saw the patterns and we knew how to step the hell out of the way, tried to as best as we could in order to survive. And yes, you know what? It's just very interesting having this topic with you. And that's why I knew you would love that video, because I knew that there was a lot that would resonate with you as well. Because I really swear you and I were siblings, but
yeah.
not any of the same,
soul brother and sister. Yeah,
but we definitely were, because we experienced this stuff, and you're not crazy, and that's the main takeaway is no, all these things were not made up. Right. This is literally out there. Like other people went through this, so take some solace and comfort that. Yes, this is also another way to heal that inner child, to actually give you an answer for why. This is why.
All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate you spending an hour with me, and
Yes.
we will talk again sometime, maybe with something found. And that's the end of this convo about Dr. Ramani's video. I hope we've learned something
Thank you for
today.
including me. Thank you for including me, Bob. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you. Okay, anytime. All right, we will talk soon, everyone.